You've likely heard Karen Silkwood's name. Maybe you've seen the movie about her nuclear contamination, but you've never heard the full story of what happened along this Logan County roadway 50 years ago. KOCO's team of investigative journalists spent 2 years digging through long-lost files, interviewing people who lived this firsthand and talking with family members of those who have passed. They shared secret recordings, diaries, and deathbed confessions. We traveled to the National Archives, where 50 years of clues were buried in boxes that had to be wheeled in. From Karen's handwritten notes about what happened inside the Kerr-McGee nuclear facility to the receipts she kept during her contamination. Our team went to Washington, D.C. and New Jersey following leads. What we've uncovered goes far beyond Crescent, Oklahoma, reaching to the FBI and CIA. So how did we get here? Let's start in 1974, when this case began to unfold.
On November 13th, 1974, Karen Silkwood, an employee at an Oklahoma nuclear facility, was on her way to meet with a reporter from the New York Times. She never got there.
Her car ran off the road only 2 miles from the Kerr-McGee facility, and she died.
Her Honda was found in a culvert. Police and the Highway Patrol say she fell asleep at the wheel.
The week before that, it was determined that Karen had received an overexposure to plutonium. Alpha particles apparently penetrated her body. The events which followed that contamination will make history in the nuclear future of Oklahoma.
There is no question that Karen was contaminated by plutonium while she was working at the Cimarron nuclear plant. She was contaminated 3 times. The last time in her own home.
It is determined that Karen's apartment has been contaminated, as well as her roommate, Sherry Ellis, and a gentleman friend.
She was only trying to help those people get a clean plant. She was going to quit. She was just trying to help.
Silkwood's family spent years in the courts fighting over a civil rights lawsuit against Kerr-McGee and its Cimarron nuclear plant. After a decade, the lawsuit was settled. Bill Silkwood says now he wants other questions settled.
I don't think that a lot of people understand the finality of it, how it ended up. They just think, well, the Silkwood case went on. There was a movie about it. Obviously, they killed her or they didn't kill her, and we're done with it. It wasn't the end of the story. The plant shut down. People who have worked at the plant have been, have gotten ill and passed. So there's so much more that happened after what everybody in their head thinks was the hard stop.
Karen was a person who cared. She saw most of the rest of the people in the plant as just young kids who didn't understand what radiation is, didn't understand what plutonium is, and were being exposed and didn't know what the implications were.
In the laboratory, we've got 18 and 19-year-old boys, and 20 and 21. And they didn't have the schooling, so they don't understand what radiation is.
So that was the situation as of the summer of 1974 when we first heard about what was going on at the Kerr-McGee plant. They both felt that the company was taking shortcuts and compromising the quality control. We said, look, if you're going to go up against Kerr-McGee on an issue like that, it's going to have to be documented. Karen then volunteered to go back when she returned back to Oklahoma, to go back and to see what she could pull together.
And I've got on here that we're still passing all welds, no matter what the pictures look like, no matter what the welds look like. We either grind down too far. And I've got a weld I'd love for you to see now. Just how far they ground it down till we lost the weld, trying to get rid of the voids, the inclusions, and the cracks. And I kept it.
We set the arrangements up for her to make this presentation to us on this quality control issue. And it was agreed And it would be on November 13th, 1974. And we had made arrangements with a reporter for the New York Times named David Burnham.
And one day in '74, Tony Mazzocchi of the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Review called me and said, would I be interested in meeting a woman who had a very interesting story and documents.
So the next thing that I knew was I got a phone call from Karen in the evening of November the 7th, 1974. And she told me that she had been contaminated already, I mean, from just what was already available from the AEC, it was clear that this plant had had repeated contamination incidents. Nobody needed to contaminate themselves purposely to prove that Kerr-McGee didn't know how to control its plutonium. It was already a pretty well-known fact.
But the whole point is that plutonium is so carcinogenic, is so potent, that it's now figured that, you know, under the conditions that you work under in that kind of a plant, you don't have to work there for 5 years. You might only have to work there for 1 friggin' month, and you've got enough of a body burden to cause cancer.
Oh,
That's...
Steve, don't tell me that.
It's a death warrant. Now, it may take 20 years, it may take 10 years, but it's going to, eventually it's going to kill you.
It is determined that Karen's apartment has been contaminated, as well as her roommate, Sherry Ellis, and a gentleman friend.
Sherry first came in, I had only been here for a couple of years, and she came in and she was like, well, I have some stuff. And it happened 5 or 6 times over a period of like 2 years. She made it very clear to me on her first visit here that she's dying of cancer. And she knows that she doesn't have anybody to inherit her stuff.
The bizarre story surrounding the Logan County woman with ties to Hollywood and an alleged nuclear power plant cover-up has become a part of Guthrie lore.
She was always an enigma, you know, as to, you know, what she did, what she said. There's all these weird things about, you know, rushing the plant with a rifle and climbing the fence and all that, but never being arrested, you know, something like that. It's an enigma, really, as to what was going on between Kerr-McGee and Sherry Ellis.
Does this have, you disconnected to Karen Silkwood in your jacket? Could you explain?
Every bit of it. The final collection that we got, which is the her manuscript, came in via mail.
I'm looking through this and I'm like, okay, this is really cool. We've got this manuscript, this, you know, 3-book story of her life. And the only part of it we have is the first part when she's a kid. And it's like, and then we've got the you know, table of contents for book 2, which is the story of the nuclear power, you know, plant. And I'm like, where's that? That's the part I want to read. You know, this is where all the juicy details are. We don't have it. You know, we never had it.
So I don't know, you know, did she finish everything?
I met Sherry Ellis, also known as Dusty, in a freshman psychology class. She would mail me articles and letters and have notes written on it. It seemed to me like it was an effort to kind of convince me that Karen's death was not an accident. I'm running behind on the interview with the FBI, so I decided to go ahead and send you this. One of the mailings that she sent me was the first 3 chapters of her book.
I don't know that I can explain anything because I don't know what evidence I have left.
I think the book might have been finished because the table of contents that she gave me showed 300+ pages on it. I think those pages are somewhere but they just haven't been found by anybody. And I can't imagine she knowing where chapter 9 was going to start, what page number it was going to start on, if she didn't have it written already. But I can tell you that the person I met in that class was just a lovely woman who was thinking straight and was very coherent. And things changed a few years after Karen died, that's all I know.
Karen and DHP people from the plant went out to her apartment with the Geiger counters and surveyed their way in, and sure enough, it was hot. And the basic bottom line question was, is she going to live? The only answer to the question would have been found at the AEC facility in Los Alamos, New Mexico, where they have these devices that can externally count how much plutonium you actually have inside you. So arrangements were made to send Karen there, and Drew and Sherry.
You gonna wait, Drew? Yeah.
Drew took no crap from nobody.
We were very young and naive. Drew was young and naive too.
I think the people of this state particularly need to know a whole lot more than they're probably ever going to know.
I was called from Los Alamos and they gave me the results, and there was some sense of a relief, but she was worried that there was still this material in her. My expectation was that this whole thing with the documents and Burnham was totally off. And so she surprised me. She said, no, they're in a safe place. I want to go ahead. So that's what happened. We decided to go ahead. So I flew from Dallas to Oklahoma City. Burnham flew from Washington, D.C. to Oklahoma City. The three of us, Drew, Burnham, and I, we went to this room at the Holiday Inn Northwest. Some weird stuff started to happen whereby my reservation was canceled. And of course, I hadn't canceled it. So I ended up sharing a room with Burnham.
You didn't think much of it, but looking back, could there have been, something going on there?
It was weird. I traveled extensively. I always stayed at a Holiday Inn. It was the first time in years and years I arrived at a Holiday Inn and someone had canceled out my reservation. That was weird. Then we get to the room and we're trying to make phone calls, and yeah, the phone didn't work. That was weird. Eventually the phone did work, but it was never explained to us what happened.
We got the lead that there was electronic surveillance going on of people in the nuclear industry. But we started to do the investigation and we found out that the LEIU stands for the Law Enforcement Intelligence Unit.
Because LEIU is a private organization. That's the way the thing is set up. It's a private organization, 224 men. And that each and every one of the 224 men in their public lives are intelligence officers. But they're in the private lives are LEIU. That's right. And the fact is the material doesn't belong to their organization. It's designed specifically so that you can't get at it.
My name is Joe Royer, and I'm an investigator for Daniel P. Sheehan.
My dad was he lived life. He lived life very well. He was a jack of all trades. Anybody that knew the name Joe Royer knew that, okay, this dude is gonna walk in here and sell me something that I don't need. But I'm going to buy it because it's Joe Royer.
She was involved in this, trying to find out this information on Kerr McGee, the contamination of employees out there at the plutonium plant. And they felt that she was a thorn in their side, and they wanted to find out what everything she was doing.
My mom had these storage units that she's had for 30 years that have been unopened. So we get in there and we were looking. This was last year, I think about May or June of last year. We were in there looking. Last container, we're on this last container, and it's 3/4, almost completely empty. And I walk over there and there's this box. It's a, probably a 3 foot by 3 foot box that's kind of flat and everything, and it's sitting in the very back corner of this container, and it's got Silkwood written on it. But in there we find these tapes and open it up, and books and some other stuff and everything, and just at that moment you're like, oh my God.
They had all the equipment available at that time in 1974, and it's obvious that they were capable of doing this because of what you told me about transcribing what you referred to as the log tapes.
He kept a lot of things close to him, and the Karen Silkwood case was one of those.
Why did you refer to Larry Baker as the wiretap king? Oh, that's gossip again. And everybody else says if anybody's going to wiretap Larry again.
Well, I got a good title, didn't I? I'm the king of the wiretaps.
Why do you think they said your name? Why do you think that you were the one who got pulled into that?
Well, probably because I did some of that stuff. In the intelligence division, you do things, But you got to understand, on phone calls, tapping, houses and stuff like that, you can have a one-party consent. As long as one party knows that it's being done, you can do it. If not, you've got to get all sorts of court papers and everything.
At the time that I was in there, Larry Baker was nowhere around. He wasn't involved, okay?
What I understand is that you were involved in an investigation of Drew Stevens and Karen Silkwood, which started in 1974, about June or July of 1974, and that you first came in contact with Drew and Stevens and Karen Silkwood at the Pizza Hut on Classen Boulevard. Is that correct?
Okay, I'll tell you, the OCPD was their only interest in the thing was in whether or not, there was any huge amount of drug traffic going on, which, as far as I know, which I don't know everything, they figured there wasn't, and so that's part of it was dropped. They were concerned whether or not anybody had a right to have that M16, and they determined that he did.
I fully expected that by this point in time, Silkwood would have shown up.
And she never came. And it got later and later.
I got a phone call from Crescent PD saying that I need a record south of 33 Highway. And I told her, I said, well, call my service manager, because I don't usually run the record. So the dispatcher at the time was my aunt. And she tells me that it was Karen Silkwood's car because I didn't know at the time.
Two key points were immediately raised. Was Karen's Honda Civic run off the road, and did she have incriminating documents in her possession?
It was during the 80s, and I worked for a law firm downtown. A lady was hired who was filling the bookkeeping position in payroll, and her name was Helen, and she said, I'm going to tell you something. I was sworn to secrecy, but you need to invite me over for dinner. We invited her to dinner, and she came over, and we were having a nice, friendly dinner. Our son was young at the time, and then after dinner it got serious, and she told us that she was on dispatch the night that Karen died. And the call came in about the death, and she did what she normally does and called out different branches of police. And then immediately she got a call back telling her to call everyone off, pull them all back, don't let them come to the scene. And so she did. And
she had no choice.
She had no choice. So she did. She called them all back.
Before Ted Sebring was called to the scene on November 13th, a separate wrecker driver was dispatched to the scene of Karen's crash. Now, according to FBI interviews, that wrecker driver was directly behind the ambulance when he was told to turn around and return to Guthrie.
It's odd to me that there's that much secrecy around it for, you know, what one side claims was a single car accident.
So Rick Fagan was the investigating officer with the Oklahoma Highway Patrol. So I think we met up with him at the Guthrie Police Department, and we told him who we were and that she was coming to meet us that night. And do you have any information on what caused her car to crash? And he said, yes, she fell asleep at the wheel. And we said, wait a minute, she couldn't have fallen asleep at the wheel. She had just gotten on the road a few minutes earlier, and Mr. Fagan, you don't understand, she was on her way to a very important meeting. It's not the kind of meeting it was not the kind of thing you would just fall asleep on the way to. And I'll never forget this. Fagan says to us, I'm going to treat it as a falling asleep at the wheel case unless you can prove something different. And that was it.
At the time of Miss Silkwood's fatality crash, I was a lieutenant assigned to the training division. We had our young trooper that had worked it. Trooper had been named Rick Fagan. He was fairly new on the patrol, and the commissioner said, just go look and make sure we've, you know, dotted the I's and crossed the T's. We were basically looking for anything that would be unusual in a sleep-related accident. Fagan was pretty sure that she had fallen asleep and run off the road. She went off the road with not sideways, not rotating.
I do not think that she died asleep at the wheel on the way to the most important meeting of her life. I don't think that happened at all. That's not, I know what didn't happen. What did happen, I leave to the experts in accident reconstruction, but I know that it didn't, I'm convinced, based on my review of everything, that it did not happen the way the Highway Patrol report said.
We needed someone independent of the local police to take a look at this whole thing.
The gentleman by the name of A.O. Pipkin, who was an accident reconstructionist in Dallas, had come up and done a accident reconstruction, and that kind of fueled the fire. They found a mark on the left side below the bumper that he attributed to the vehicle being struck by another vehicle. And the wrecker driver pulled up south of the wing wall. He hooked to the towing hook and pulled the car back up over the wing wall, and it made that mark when it crossed the wing wall. Now keep in mind, she covered almost a football field before she hit the culvert, and made no attempt to steer, made no attempt to brake, and you know, that's not somebody that is awake and alert, trying to keep from having a wreck.
Only somebody holding on to that steering wheel could have gone in that trajectory, because if she really had been asleep, she would have lived, because the curvature of the land would have pulled the car more and more out to essentially a grassy area, a pasture, whatever you want to call it out there. She would have lived. She never ever would have gotten anywhere close to that culvert.
You know, and Drew taught her how to race, and you look at that car and look at her bracing, For the impact and bending the wheel and, yeah.
Maybe the accident portion was just that. It was a tragic accident, but then the cover-up started.
So Sebring's garage had supposedly pulled all the personal effects that were in the car and put them in a old oil can box, put a piece of tape around it, and they handed it to us. So we're in Burnham's car. We got Drew, Burnham, and myself. We're tearing the thing open, see what she was bringing us. There was nothing in there about quality control, about tests, about photographs, negatives, and nothing like that. It was all regarding the collective bargaining negotiations. That's all that was there. So the combination of those two experiences, that, wait a minute, where's the documents? And Fagan insisting that she must have fallen asleep at the wheel, you know, I felt like we were really in hostile territory. Now, interestingly, there were 3 people who were traveling the highway who were the first to come across the accident site. The culvert is carrying a little stream. There's mud on each side of the stream. Anything that, and the car comes to rest on its left-hand side, on the driver's side. So if there's no windshield, everything is over like this. All right. The 3 guys, they say there were papers all around it, and they say that the cops who showed up, the highway patrolman, picked up the papers and tossed them back in the car. All right. None of the papers that were given to us the following day on November 14th at Sebring's garage had mud on them. Absolutely none of them.
So I went home, went to bed. 3 hours later, she called me. She says, the nuclear people want in there to look at this car.
The same 2 guys who I had talked to earlier that night. The third one was Jerry Sinke. This is where the differences between 1974-75 and today in 2024, 50 years later. Because I've now had a chance to look at the records, the AEC's records, the FBI's records, Kerr-McGee's records. I looked at the entire trial, all the transcript, all the documents produced in discovery. And I was able to organize them. It was a lot of paper. And what I found out was that her urine kits and her fecal kits that she continued to use even after November the 8th were spiked. And he concludes that not only was it hot, that it contained, this is a fecal sample, it contained plutonium that had been added to it. In other words, was not excreted by Karen Silkwood, but had been in that container. The point I guess I'm trying to make is that this never came out of trial. This sample that was given at Baptist Hospital was the proof that Silkwood didn't do it. Her whole life was shattered by this point in time. She saw clearly how dangerous the situation is. Kerr McGee would have you think that she would have continued with this scheme even after the 7th of November and kept it going. It doesn't make any sense. Clearly, she was the victim of somebody at the plant who spiked her kits that she picked up on November the 5th, 1974.
There were some suspects, but it's impossible to prove how she got contaminated. We just know that she got contaminated.
But I can honestly bet that most of the people that were involved have passed. You know, there's probably one or two, I wouldn't even say key players. I'm sure all the key players have gone because, you know, if they were my age or even slightly younger, they'd be 90 or 100 years old now.
I think Larry Upchurch is the one I need to talk to next. He's the only one I haven't talked to. And I think he's going to be the one that's going to help me.
I'm a retired lieutenant from the Oklahoma City Police Department.
Now that I'm recording, I just want to make sure I have it on the record that it's okay with you that I record.
Yes.
I am probably just going to go over the same stuff we talked about, so I apologize for making you repeat yourself again. I just want to make sure, like I said, everything's on the record the way you're saying it. I definitely don't want to misinterpret anything at all.
That's all right, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just start at the beginning. If you could just talk to me a little bit about what you did in the department as it related to Kerr McGee or the Silkwood case. Anything you remember from that time?
At that time, I worked in the intelligence detail, which was directly out of the chief's office. Silkwood was brought to our attention by retired Lieutenant Jim Reading, who was the security director for Kerr McGee.
Jim Reading's job was to protect Kerr McGee at all costs.
But how about Reading? When did you first report to Reading? That part of it I don't want to get into. What was this other question? That I don't want to get into. As far as what I know about the OCPD thing, I'll give you. Why don't you want to get into it about Reading? Well, I just don't.
I think there's a lot more that Jim Reading and his rest of his security team did that we don't know about.
Yeah, I talked to James Reading after her death. What did you talk to him about after her death? Well, everybody seems to be running around looking for a conspiracy that probably isn't there.
And my understanding is that Kerr McGee got a group and they did the special investigation. That's
Because that was Reading. That was
right. That was right. That was what Reading did.
Kerr McGee was concerned about whether or not there were any, plots or conspiracies to, divert plutonium or anything else. I mean, you would be too if you were in charge of a, nuclear facility.
During that time, did Reading ever, whenever he brought this to your attention, do you remember kind of what his reason was to put surveillance on Silkwood?
I think it was something to do with Silkwood being contaminated and documents or something being taken out of the facility at Crescent.
When you all would do surveillance, can you talk about what that looked like, what all that entailed?
Well, it was following people, seeing what their activity was, taking photographs. On occasion, court ordered wiretapping, although I don't remember any wiretapping on the Silkwood that we were involved in.
Whenever you all would follow Silkwood, would you guys just follow her wherever she went, I guess, to work, so to her house, just places like that?
Yes.
So when you were doing surveillance, it wasn't just on Silkwood, right? It was on a whole group. Can you just talk about maybe some other people that you all were doing surveillance on?
It was a group that run around with Silkwood, and forgive me, I can't remember names that long ago. I remember one was her boyfriend.
He was followed everywhere. We were followed everywhere. All of our phones were tapped.
We noticed some weird stuff going on. We noticed, we could hear, you know, when I would call Drew Stevens, we could hear clicking on the lines. And we could hear all of a sudden the connection's going dead. We would get mail from him to us that had been open, clearly had been open. So after the death, I think some things happened. Who was doing it, I don't know.
Now tell me this. You know the notebook you photographed for Drew Stevens? Okay. Did he ask you to photograph it, or did you suggest?
He asked me so as to have a separate record. He was quite paranoid. I was going to comment, I don't want to relay that to him, but he was quite paranoid at the time. He thought his phone was bugged, and his house was under surveillance, and that he might be bumped off any minute. He was very paranoid.
Drew was trying to send information and things about all this to someplace safe. I think he knew that he was possibly in real trouble.
Will you tell us if you gave them to the FBI or?
I will not say anything about it now.
So I'm thinking that probably after the call in to KTOK, he was going, oh my God, I need to document everything I can and get this to somebody where it will survive.
Let's take plutonium as an example and examine its toxic heavy metal qualities in addition to the effect of the radiation that you would receive in inhaled quantities.
Well, we really need a medical man here as well, but in general, I would imagine that a few micrograms of plutonium in the body would probably end up in the bones, and you would eventually have a bone cancer.
Okay, thank you, doctor. Thank you for calling, sir.
It's just different to see his writing, hear his thoughts, and try to read between the lines and see exactly how concerned he was.
It's so heartbreaking to hear him say he just wished he could hold her again. Hold her one more time.
It was 1995, and I moved to Edmond. Was living with some friends. Had driven by where I thought the accident took place. Saw that Drew had a body shop in Edmond, and that was the number I could find, so I left a voicemail, and I never heard back, but I also remember it being within a week of when he actually passed.
There's not much left of the single-engine Laser Edge plane. Part of a wing is about the only thing recognizable. The plane crashed in a wheat field west of the Air Park runway just minutes after 10 this morning. The pilot, Drew Stevens, was practicing aerobatic maneuvers when the plane went down.
I don't know if he heard my voice and was building up the courage to call me back, or if maybe one of his workers, you know, took the message, wrote it on a piece of paper, and it got lost, so I never got to actually speak to him. When you finally get the courage up to reach out to somebody, and then shortly thereafter they meet in a very untimely, odd, at the time, death, it's just, you almost want to run back down and not make any waves for a while.
In November 1974, the union requested to the Department of Justice that her death be investigated, and it was at that point in time that the Department of Justice asked the FBI to launch a formal investigation. And it was assigned to an FBI agent in Oklahoma City named Larry Olson. And immediately, this is from the FBI's records, Olson contacted Kerr-McGee Security and essentially set up an arrangement to work hand in glove with Kerr-McGee, and that's what happened. So Olson he interviews all the right people. He interviews Van Diestag, and Van Diestag tells him in excruciating detail that that sample that he got from Silkwood, which was the one at Baptist Hospital, was contaminated, was spiked. Then what happens is that instead of going back and determining, okay, who would have had access to these kits, this kit that was given to her on November the 5th. He doesn't do anything. Ultimately, you know, the United States Congress has an investigation. And it's clearly pointed out that both the AEC and the FBI had failed. And Olson says, well, I looked at that whole thing, I studied that whole thing, and I determined that the distribution of those sample kits was totally random, that nobody knew until the person walked up to that shelf which ones they were going to pull off the shelf. Well, that was a total lie, a total fabrication. So a few weeks after this hearing in 1976, the FBI issues its final report on Silkwood's contamination. And the report is that, it's only a paragraph long, it says, well, because her kits were contaminated, she must have done it. And that was it. That's their report to the American people.
We heard that you've got a contact with the FBI.
I do.
And that relating to the contamination incident, could you relate that to us?
Sure, I'd be glad to.
What's going on there?
Okay, my contact tells me, okay, that espionage is not to be ruled out in this case. He won't go any further than that.
They're missing 40 pounds of bomb-grade plutonium, you know, enough to make like 3 atomic bombs the size of Hiroshima.
Internally, in the plant, a lot of people knew what the muff was. I mean, because there were times in which all production was just totally shut down, and they went through this procedure where they would try to essentially wash down everything internally into the plant to find the missing plutonium in the pipes so that they could zero out the muff number. So internally in the plant, people knew, yeah, there was a muff. So it was not some great big secret. And to someone like Silkwood, it would mean, well, it's just more evidence of the fact that there's contamination going on because some of that muff is in her lungs and the lungs of her coworkers.
There's always inventory shrinkage. You know, a kilogram, 25 kilograms of missing plutonium in the inventory. That's more than can be found, because they say, oh, it's in the pipes, and it's impossible. Because when they decommissioned, they didn't find anything.
Somebody was watching her. I think at that point, they may have thought that she was also stumbled across the missing plutonium. You know, whether she did or not, I don't know for sure.
5 years after her death, the Silkwood case went to the courts.
Former plutonium worker James Knoll was employed at the Cimarron facility for 5 years. He said the workers were never told about the dangers of plutonium and that any worker could carry out as much plutonium as they wanted, as often as they wanted.
Now, there is that trial testimony by James Noel. He testifies, and he's testifying from notes that he took from this night in October 1974, that Silkwood called him, that she was upset as to what she was seeing, and she mentioned the fact that the muff, that the material unaccounted for, was such and such. I think she definitely called Noel. I think he's credible. And the judge had ruled that if the proof was that Karen Silkwood had intentionally spiked her samples, then Kern McGee wasn't liable at all. So Kern McGee set out in that trial to prove that she had done that. That was their line.
It was not only contamination, but Karen's personal life that surfaced many times in the 6-week trial.
Get all the dirt you can and then sling it and see what sticks on the wall.
But we've also learned the FBI is keeping close tabs on a theory that Karen may have become contaminated by smuggling nuclear material, namely plutonium, from the Kerr-McGee facility.
If a person was diverting material, why at the same time would they keep trying to bring so much attention upon themselves, as Karen was doing from about September on?
Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, that theory to me makes little sense. So then I guess the next question that comes to my mind is why, that the FBI is bothering to take a look at this thing at all. And I'm sure there's a reason.
And Judge Tice came in and kind of changed the way things worked. He was the perfect judge for that long, contentious trial because he was very level-headed.
The problem is we got so high into what was going on that the CIA freaked out and came in and just shut down our entire count one.
And unknown to us until much later, the CIA and the FBI came to see him to encourage him not to allow us to assert where the missing plutonium went to.
KOCO's investigations uncovered a biography written by Judge Tice. In it, he details a secret court hearing that happened before a witness was to testify that plutonium taken from Kerr-McGee was actually being smuggled into foreign countries to be used to build nuclear bombs. We know the FBI and CIA met with Judge Tice, but we don't know, no one does, what was said inside that room.
Judge Tice gets up on the stand and he said, well, Mr. Sheehan, you can be certain that it's sinister, but it's also most definitely secret. He said, this is just a glass mountain that you're not going to be allowed to climb in this case.
So he did a memo and sealed it in case the 10th Circuit needed to look at it.
So, did you all have any theories as to where that missing plutonium was?
Well, Danny did.
You're walking right into something like you don't have the slightest idea what you're dealing with here. These guys, this is the highest echelons of the most covert operations of the Central Intelligence Agency.
First on the stand was Kenneth Plowman, a health physics technician at the plant from 1969 to 1972. Silkwood attorney Jerry Spence asked him why he left. Plowman said it was because contamination was everywhere. The equipment leaked and no one tried to control it. He said he found plutonium contamination in the lunchroom, on the grounds, and said workers played with the plutonium pellets. He said he reported these incidents to the Atomic Energy Commission, but they did nothing about it.
There is a
NRC report that they published, which said she was right about the problems.
It surprises me how much of it is still there. You know, you look at it from the outside, and if you didn't know what you were driving past, you wouldn't even pay any attention to it. The people who live around it don't even pay any attention to it. But again, because it's a 50-year-old story, and it's been closed for 45 of those 50 years. So, but you know, you go inside and you can see where the rods were stored and where the carve out of the concrete wall.
I think we're in a better position, you know, in a lot of our industries with our workers because of people like your mom.
Who she became, the martyr that she became, the story, the history, looking back on it, all of that, I mean, it warms you up inside that she didn't die for no reason, you know, because of the changes that took place, the safety measures that were there, the plant shutting down, whether they admitted that they were wrong or not, you know, they kind of swept it under the rug, shut it down, and snuck out with their tail between their legs. That wouldn't have happened, you know. So that part of it makes you proud as a son, especially that she did it and that happened, whether she did it for that reason or not. I don't, in my head, believe that what they did to her was intentional, as far as I think they were trying to force her off the road, maybe scare her, maybe intimidate her.
I asked him about the car incident, and I said, what do you think? You know, was it a homicide? And was it an accident? What was it? You know, and that's whenever he told me, he goes, I think it was an accident. Well, we know it was an accident. We know it was a car accident, but, you know, probably know that somebody was following her that night. He would never elaborate.
You don't believe that there was any foul play, and so from what you've heard, you all didn't suspect there to be anybody else involved in this car accident?
Not in the car accident.
But what I can tell you is the man stayed tight-lipped about it all the way through. I mean, this was 2022. And you're thinking, okay, 90% of the people are gone.
What were they mainly interested in? Was it guns? Was it marijuana? Was it smuggling plutonium? To your knowledge?
It's pretty difficult to answer.
You have all these multiple different parties involved, you know, and then what if you have just the perfect storm? All these people all of a sudden converge on her at once.
All have
and
a vested interest for different reasons, whether
different
it was
reasons, right.
the contamination,
Correct.
the poorly run plant, you know, all of the things. Everybody has a vested interest in making it go away,
Correct.
making the story go away. I know that people that are working on it now still get told when they make certain calls to certain people, hey, you might want to let that one go. And, you know, it's, again, 50 years later. There's no telling if we'll ever get an absolute answer, a definitive closure, but if anybody knows anything, or if, you know, there were confessions on their, as they were passing, or they passed the story on to their children, those are the people that we're really trying to find. Is if maybe you weren't directly involved, but, you know somebody that was, or you're related to somebody that was, or, you know, you've got this document, that document. We just are running out of time, so it would be nice to, if there's anybody that would like to let us know, that'd be a good time to come forward.